On Friday, the 13th of January 2017, Michael Lynton announced that he would be leaving his position as CEO of Sony Entertainment. There has been speculation about him leaving for some time, so this hardly comes as a surprise. In this video, I will look into what we know of Lynton's departure, how it may affect the movie division Sony Pictures, and the rumors that Sony might merge the movie and gaming divisions. Michael Lynton has served as the CEO of Sony Pictures since 2004, as well as CEO of Sony Entertainment since 2012. We haven't devoted too much attention to Michael Lynton in our earlier Sony coverage, for the simple reason that he isn't all that involved with the daily running of the movie division Sony Pictures. He works mostly with the overall strategies for Sony Pictures and Sony Entertainment, while reporting to Sony Corporate in Japan. He could of course have gotten more involved with the daily running if he wanted to, but instead he left that entirely into the hands of his chosen chairpersons for Sony Pictures. First Amy Pascal, and after she was forced to leave following the Sony hack, Tom Rothman. Lynton has in fact chosen such a hands-off approach that many have referred to him as the Sphinx, sitting there in the background, overlooking everything, but not really doing a whole lot. Did we learn something cool in the Sony hack, you wonder? Did he, like Amy Pascal, write emails about crossing over Barbie with He-Man and forcing out Ivan Reitman from Ghostbusters, or other shenanigans like that? No, not really. Granted, we haven't gone through every single email he's written, but other than agreeing with pretty much everything Pascal wanted, the only juicy thing to come out of his emails is how the modern-day aristocracy of the rich and influential, like Sony CEO Michael Lynton, get their kids into Ivy League universities. Long story short, connections, donations, and setting up scholarships go a long way. So nothing too scandalous to talk about. He did survive the Sony hack after all, which surprised some. So why is he leaving now? Was he really pushed out, or is he leaving of his own free will? There is nothing to indicate Lynton was actively fired. On the contrary, everything suggests that he not only left of his own free will, but that he has wanted out for some time. As early as 2014, emails leaked in the Sony hack sent to friends and family reveal that he was thinking about leaving, and instead pursuing the position of president of the New York University. Of course, this is unlikely to have gone down well with his higher-ups at Sony once they learned of it. Michael Lynton was also an early investor in Snapchat, and ever since the Sony hack, several have speculated that he might leave Sony in order to take a more active role in Snapchat. That would appear to be what has happened, as Lynton explicitly stated Snapchat as his reason for leaving his current position as Sony Pictures and Sony Entertainment CEO on February 2nd. According to the New York Times, Lynton will officially become chairman of the board at Snap Inc., which owns Snapchat. Snap Inc. is incidentally expected to go public this spring, with an eye toward being valued at $30 billion or more. Like in Sony, Lynton is not expected to play a direct management role, but rather focus on matters involving strategy and governance in support of Evan Spiegel, Snap's chief executive director. But Lynton will stay with Sony for a while longer, albeit in another capacity. After Lynton formally leaves his current position, Sony's Tokyo-based CEO Kaz Hirai will take a more active role in Sony Entertainment. He'll be setting up a second office in California, taking on an additional role as co-chief executive. For 6 months, Lynton will at least partially stay on, ease the transition, show Hirai the ropes, and assist in finding a permanent replacement. Some names have already been mentioned, like Jeffrey Katzenberg, Jeff Robinov, and Jim Giannopoulos. Giannopoulos, of course, worked alongside Tom Rothman when they were both in Fox, and it was Giannopoulos that took over Rothman's role when he was ousted. So where does that leave Tom Rothman, the current chairman of Sony Pictures? Probably just fine, in the short run at least. But depending on who they hire to replace Lynton and Hirai's stance once he learns more of the inner workings in Sony Pictures, Rothman's long-term future at Sony could be a lot less secure. especially without either Lynton or Pascal there to help him. I'm going to talk more about the Tom Rothman regime in the next Sony video. Stay tuned for that. Until then, there is another rumor that has been making the rounds that suddenly got more relevant. On December 12th of 2015, the New York Post published an article claiming that the Sony Corporation was considering a restructuring of its US-based operations. More specifically, multiple sources had informed them that Sony considered placing the struggling Sony Pictures under the larger and far more profitable Sony Interactive Entertainment, led by Andrew House, while Michael Lynton would exit Sony Pictures. As we've just seen, exactly 1 month later, Lynton did indeed announce his exit. Does that mean a merger of the gaming and movie divisions is now more likely? At the time of publishing the article, no decision had been made on the matter, but it claimed that Sony hoped to reach a decision before the end of the fiscal quarter, on March 31st of 2017. Naturally, Sony denied the story. Even according to the article, no decision had been reached, and that is probably still the case. This doesn't mean there is nothing to the story, period. Sony also denied there was any chance in hell of Spider-Man coming back to Marvel, or even working with Marvel, right up until the Marvel Spider-Man deal was announced. So let's, for the sake of argument, assume that talks in that direction are happening and pan out. What would it mean? Would Tom Rothman and his cronies suddenly control Sony's PlayStation output, as some have feared? No, even in the event this does pan out, the biggest change will be on paper. Despite what may have made the rounds in various social media, this isn't about merging the movie and gaming divisions into one, as much as moving Sony Pictures underneath Sony Interactive in Sony's organizational chart. For all intents and purposes, it would likely mean that Andrew House, in addition to retaining his role as the head of Sony Interactive, would also take on Michael Lynton's role as the head of Sony Pictures. That wouldn't mean that House would manage the day-to-day operations of Sony Pictures. Rothman would likely still run Sony Pictures, but report to Andrew House instead of Michael Lynton. Of course, if Andrew House were to choose to intervene in some form, he could. Interestingly, the name Andrew House has not popped up as one of those likely to replace Lynton. Chances are, Sony themselves still don't know who they're going to hire and what they're going to do next. But as soon as that becomes clear, we'll be sure to let you know. Let me know your opinions on all of this in the comments.
If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Join us for spin-free news and analysis of the happenings and corporate politics behind the scenes of your favorite genre movies, as well as explorations of your favorite characters and their backgrounds and context here at Midnight's Edge.